Today is training camp, ladies and gentlemen. On today's show, we're going to discuss the training camp roster and schedule and discuss the first part of Florida Panthers Media Day, all on today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome into this Thursday, September 21st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're to our team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News, and you can follow me on X at Monoman12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. And today's episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50 plus infections. Get yours today at jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. So, Cats fans, it is officially here. Florida Panthers training camp begins today at the Florida Panthers Ice Den, and we have a whole bunch to cover. Where there's actually going to be 2 episodes today here for your podcast feed. So subscribe to the channel, please, if you want to get both shows. And just like I say in my outro, pop into your podcast feed. But yeah, as Jacob and I were recording on Tuesday, 7:21 to be exact, I get the email of the Florida Panthers training camp roster, and we started recording at 7, so I'm not checking my phone. So it's a little bit of time in between that recording and the announcement, the recording, the announcement time, and actually coming back here and recording a show for you guys talking about the roster. So before we get to the actual roster, the times for training camp will be starting today, September 21st. Split squad, just like how they're going to do the doubleheader. There's going to be a red team and there's going to be a blue team. We don't know who's going to be on what team yet until the teams take the ice in Coral Springs tomorrow. The red team's going to take the ice at 9 a.m. while the blue team's going to take it at noon. And then they're going to flip on the 22nd with blue going at 9 a.m. and red going at 12 p.m. Kind of like if you're playing golf and you're on the PGA Tour, your tee time on one day is going to be in the afternoon, and then the very next one is going to be in the morning. And then they flip-flop on the Saturday and Sunday as well, right before they take on the Nashville Predators on Monday at 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. So the training camp roster is filled with 33 forwards, 20 defensemen, and 6 goalies. And by the way, the practices are open to the public and in areas with limited capacity. So you guys might want to get there early if you guys want an opportunity to sit down and see the players for yourselves. I know that's been a complaint a lot from the fan base about not being able to see the practices in person. I know the one big complaint was when the Florida Panthers were actually practicing in Wyoming during a Western Canadian trip, and the fans in Wyoming were able to see the practice, but there's a lot of outcry from the fan base saying, "Oh, the fans from Wyoming can see it, but the ones in Florida can't. The ones who are actually there." So maybe we're seeing a little bit of a change when it comes to the fans being able to watch the team more often as far as that. So hopefully you guys get an opportunity more to see these guys. But with the roster, there's going to be cuts after the first game. Some guys are going to be sent back to their junior teams. For example, we are likely going to see guys like Josh Davies, Merrick Alsher go back to their junior teams. Luke Coughlin go back to Rimouski in the MJHL. Liam Arnsby go back to North Bay. and all, and Sandis Vomanis. But also there's guys that we really haven't highlighted too much this offseason as far as guys who are going to be fighting for roster spots. And I know we've talked about the defensive depth and a lot of bodies for the Panthers and all, but a lot of guys who are going to some of the guys who are going to be really challenging for spots who probably know that this is a big opportunity for them. Guys like a Matt Kierstead, guys like a Casey Fitzgerald who re-signed with the Panthers. Matt Kierstead had signed a 2-year extension. The first year being a two-way, the other year being a one-way deal as well. And other guys who are signed as far as maybe depth pieces for Charlotte, who are likely who you might see them as like guys who might be placed on waivers at the end of training camp, but still a great opportunity for them as well, like a Jona Djokovic as well, who played for the San Jose Sharks last year as well. Alexander True is another one. Forward Alexander True, who when the Florida Panthers and the Charlotte Checkers actually shared an affiliate, uh, when the Florida Panthers and the Seattle Kraken, shared an affiliate with the Checkers, Alexander True is the leading goal scorer for the Charlotte Checkers that season when they had a shared affiliation that year, right before the Seattle Kraken separated and had their own affiliate in Coachella Valley as well, who made the final last year. Strange enough, in their first year, Juvis Ginskas, sorry if I'm pronouncing that correctly, from Latvia, signed back in April for the Panthers as well. He's going to get an opportunity. And another one, someone that we haven't mentioned too much recently, is a guy who's going to be on a PTO, Brett Ritchie, who played the last season, 34 games in Calgary, 16 with the Arizona Coyotes. And funny enough, Brett Ritchie was actually traded for his brother, Nick Ritchie, at the trade deadline last year. So strange when it comes to that as well. And mentioned Matt Kierstead, mentioned Casey Fitzgerald earlier, but also Lucas Carlson was a guy that we mentioned a lot last season as that seventh defenseman who led D-men in points in Charlotte last year. Maybe he's taken a next step. Remember, Lucas Carlson was part of that 2 trades in a 6-day span with the Chicago Blackhawks that had the Florida Panthers getting rid of the contract of Brett Connolly, got rid of Henrik Borgstrom as well in that same trade. Lucas Carlson was just seen as a guy at the time of AHL depth, but has really developed his game over the last few years, especially on the offensive side as well. And you're going to get a lot of opportunities guys who get a lot of opportunities to possibly make the roster, guys who maybe you wouldn't expect to make the roster. Maybe Mackie Samoskevich, we were talking about with Jacob Winans a few weeks ago, how maybe there's a 25 to 50% chance of him making it. Highly unlikely still, but that's going to be another highlight point as well. Justin Sordiff, too. He is more unlikely though. Despite that, Mike Benning might be a product of the logjam of defensemen and also needing some time in AHL Charlotte, but still an opportunity for him to get some uh, the legs under him in a hockey setting. Same thing with him and Evan Naus as well. So that, especially with, even though Brandon Montour and Aaron Ekblad are on the training camp roster, we're not going to see him on the ice, and we'll get to both of them actually later in the show. And another guy who is going to get an opportunity as well. Another guy who the Florida Panthers signed during the free agency period was Rasmus Asplund, who they signed on July 5th, played with Charlotte and Buffalo. More of some possible bottom 6 depth as well for the Panthers as well, and all. So that's going to be some of the guys who are going to be as a part of the mix for the Panthers, and of course a lot of the guys from the rookie showcase as well. Guys like Kai Schwitt as well is going to be part of it, part of the training camp roster as well. As far as the goalies as well, we know Bob is going to be there. We know Spencer Knight is going to be there. We know Stolarz is going to be there. But we spoke a lot about Ludovic Weber over the weekend with the rookie showcase, an older veteran. Like I said, the chances are very low of him making it with a logjam of goalies, but still an opportunity for him to showcase and even maybe even make a good impression when he does eventually make it to Charlotte under Jordy Kinnear as well. And also another one of the goalies, Evan Cormier, who played in the Winnipeg Jets system over the last year, 35 games in the ECHL with Kalamazoo, and then 2 games in Manitoba in the AHL. So that's kind of rounds out the goalies. And of course, Matt Gusta is going to get his opportunity to get a little bit of action. We likely won't see Sergei Bobrovsky in any of the doubleheader games as well. At least that's my prediction, to give the young guys between the pipes as well. And then as the preseason gets towards the tail end, we're likely going to see him get a start there. Some also things with the older guys as well. Some of them might get a little bit of rest early on in the preseason, even in the middle parts. So minutes are not going to be too big for these players as far as that, especially with the roster as expanded as it is right now. So yeah. In segment number 2, we are going to start our media day coverage, and we are going to start with talking about Bill Zito. In segment number 2, we're going to discuss that more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about AG1. And our next partner, AG1, the daily foundational nutritional supplement that supports whole body health. I literally drink it every day because I just came back from South Florida. I mean, media day in the morning, drove back, had some errands to do, and finally getting in front of a computer at almost midnight to record a show. And prior to the show and early in the day, I took my AG1 because I need a little bit of the break from all the cafe cubano that I drank during my trip down to South Florida. And sometimes I drink my AG1 in the morning, but in this case, because your boy is staying up very late for today's shows, I drank it in the afternoon in order to keep me energetic. It makes me feel great, and something that's got me ready to go. And it's doing great for my body and giving my body the nutrition it craves, and all. So if a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/NHL network. That's drinkag1.com/NHL network. Check it out. Segment number 2 here on this Thursday, September 21st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So we are going to start off with the general manager, Bill Zito, speaking to the media on media day. And just letting you guys know that we're not going in exact order as far as this podcast than what they did, how they conducted it on Wednesday afternoon. Just going to dedicate the next episode to more of the bigger highlighted players, but we're going to start with Bill Zito here and then discuss Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Steven Lorentz in segment number 3. So first of all, Bill Zito announced some changes in the hockey operations department. Said that Sonny Mehta has been promoted to assistant general manager and head of analytics as well. Spent the last 3 seasons as assistant general manager and spent some time with the Carolina Hurricanes from 2018 all the way to 2020. Gregory Campbell, former Panthers second round pick, 67th overall, spent his time from 2003 to 2010 with the Panthers, is also going to be promoted to general manager. He spent the last 3 seasons as VP of Player Personnel and Development, and also was the general manager for the Charlotte Checkers the last 2 seasons. So, moving up in the organization, and the Florida Panthers are continuing that family dynamic of keeping former Panthers in the organization. And he was a player development coach in the Blue Jackets organization. So, go figure that the Bill Zito, being with Columbus prior to this, is digging into his former stop as well. And Joachim Hedlund is been promoted to European scouting. Spent the last 6 seasons with the Panthers. Served as an amateur scout in Europe, and now has been promoted. And the final one, Patrick Hornquist, straight out of retirement, is going to be in the scouting department and a development consultant. And that's something that we spoke about after the draft and said that there might be room for Patrick Hornquist to be part of the front office for the Florida Panthers. And that's why they didn't trade him, even prior to him being on LTIR due to his head injuries as well. So keeping it in and that promise that he wasn't going to be traded. Now he's with the organization in an expanded role. And man, is that exciting for all the amount of Panthers who are with the organization. We mentioned Gregory Campbell, Patrick Hornquist, Sean Thornton, Brian McCabe, Roberto Luongo, Ed Jovanowski. I can go on and on about all the Panthers who are involved with this organization. I know I'm probably forgetting someone on the top of my head, but Bill Zito also spoke about how he wanted to put more of an emphasis on the minor league team down in Charlotte, making sure that someone is there all the time. Not saying that they don't pay attention to it, but something that is, with the Panthers being as low as far as prospect rankings in the NHL, it's very important to even get those picks for the Panthers who are lower as far as the Panthers not having one until 2026. It's really crucial to have those guys come up, and also the ones that you do have, like a Mackie Samoskevich and all, making sure that they're going to develop well, because when you're unable to pay guys, because you're not going to keep all three of Sam Reinhart, Gus Forsling, and Brandon Montour. You got to make sure that those cheap contracts are going to be the guys who are going to be on the come up to continue building that culture for the Florida Panthers. And spoke about how the run comes with a standard as well, and how he's was really appreciative of how Paul Maurice teaches and all. Asked about the hard work that Matthew Tkachuk does when it comes to coming back healthy, which we'll get into Matthew Tkachuk on part 2 of covering media day. But Bill Zito spoke about how Matthew Tkachuk works so hard, but it's really what he does off the ice that is huge. Asked about the division and how it was the last 2 years, and all, and how tough it's going to be this time around, because the Atlantic Division is seen as one of the toughest divisions in the NHL, if not the toughest one. And spoke about how there's so much uncertainty with how tough it's going to be, because in 2022, when they won the President's Trophy, the playoffs were decided by January, and then this time around, the Florida Panthers are scratching and clawing, and every night being a playoff game for the Panthers as well. This was a little bit of a this was a little bit of dancing around a question when Bill Zito was asked about the statuses of Brandon Montour and Aaron Ekblad, and asked about what are the latest updates on them. Well, I guess dancing around is the wrong way of putting it, but really saying a whole lot of something, but a whole lot of nothing once again. Bill Zito spoke about how the original timelines were 6 months. The Panthers were eliminated, I believe, June 12th. 6 months. Brandon Montour got his surgery actually immediately. So 6 months would be December 15th, and spoke about how, made a little bit of analogy, saying how you're getting to the car, you're getting to the Great Lakes, but the way to get there is at the end, when to get to the peninsula, is getting on a boat, but you don't know how that boat is going to function. Something like that, paraphrasing. And so you don't know what's going to happen once you get there. And he tried his best doing an analogy based on that. But the way I saw it, the way I put my own analogy together is, I'm going to age myself a little bit here. Let's say you're playing Pokemon. And I know Jacob Langsam from Panther Puri is a big fan of Pokemon. I haven't played since Platinum version. But think about how you can't use a certain HM. For example, HM01, which is cut. You can't use that HM until you defeat a certain gym leader. It's the same thing when it comes to, taking slap shots, doing some drills, and you need to get through the rehab process first, and working all those muscles to get back into certain shape when it comes to it. The, you know what I mean when it comes to comparing the getting to one point and the other. And that's really what Bill Zito spoke about when it comes to that December 15th timeline, even though it's not really a timeline. Basically, it's no update at honestly, when you think about it. That's just because last a few weeks ago we heard Brandon Montour November, Aaron Ekblad in January. And then today, what did he say? Something in the middle of those two. So, what do we know? It's somewhere in that range, despite no timetable. So, you know, that's basically the update when it comes to those guys. Etulis Theranen was excuse me, Bill Zito was also asked about Etulis Theranen about his extension, and Bill Zito spoke about how he's a guy who does everything right, especially off the puck as well, and a guy who's just a grinder who works hard and all that stuff. And we mentioned Matt Kierstead and Lucas Carlson last segment, but was was asked about how carefully he's gonna be looking to get the right seventh defenseman on the roster as far as guys who are going to compete with who we just mentioned are going to be out for a little bit of time. And Bill Zito was just talking about how just be the best player and that you can be when it comes to those guys, and a little bit of time in Charlotte in the prior season. Hopefully, it's got them ready for this moment for them to hopefully make the team. And also, one of the last questions that Bill Zito was asked is just about the consequences of the Stanley Cup run as far as a possible hangover or the injuries accumulated because you're putting so much of your body on the line for the cup, and knowing that with the lack of draft capital up against the cap and now the injuries, asked if it's going to be harder for the Panthers to get back to that point. And Bill Zito made a great point saying about how, you know, the great teams do it over and over again, and the fact that they find ways to build on what their core has built. I mean, look at the Pittsburgh Penguins winning back-to-back cups and all, and they were competitive even before getting there. I know they had a gap in between cups between '08 and 2016, but they were constantly in the dance, but constantly trading draft capital in order to get those complementary pieces around Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Chris Letang as well. Also spoke about Tampa, back-to-back champions as well in 2020 and 2021 as well, especially because they did it in a 9-month span as well during a bubble and a shortened season as well. Uh, and there's no reason to believe he believes that there's no reason to believe that the Panthers can't get back to, not necessarily get back to the final, but can't be in the mix as far as the serious contenders in the Eastern Conference as well, especially knowing that you got Barkov, Kachuk in place as well. It's just really about how you're gonna put it all together, how it's gonna be when puck drops come October 12th against the Minnesota Wild. But we're gonna transition over to segment number 3, where we are going to discuss some of the newcomers on the team who are getting new chances with the Florida Panthers. We're gonna discuss that more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about Birddogs. And Birddogs makes you look good. Birddogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Birddog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made of stiff, restricting cotton. They fit way better. The Birddogs fixed this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks like khaki shorts but stretches so you can get way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Birddogs uses anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. Birddogs are functional for any occasion: golf, date, evening out in the pool, workout, lounging, and for your work. Go to birddogs.com/lockedonNHL or enter promo code LOCKEDONNHL at checkout for a free Bird Dogs water bottle with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedonNHL for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. Segment number 3 here on this Thursday, September 21st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So, two of the guys who spoke at Media Day, some of the newcomers, like we said during our Wine-Ins Wednesday edition of the show, we wanted to hear what Oliver Ekman-Larsson had to say, especially a guy who first round pick, captain, made it to a Western Conference final a decade ago, to a lot of uncertainty of a franchise that might be relocating, might not, and then going to a situation where a different front office change from Jim Benning to Patrick Alvin and Jim Rutherford and then head coaches from Travis Green, Bruce Boudreau, and now Rick Tocchet there in Vancouver. So much uncertainty, and that affects of everyone's play, including Oliver Ekman-Larsson. And yeah, doesn't have to live up to that big contract with that a 1 times $2.5 million deal. So maybe this is a little bit of a refreshment for Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Maybe he is refreshed coming into this franchise, and I'm actually going to have an article in the next few days about Oliver Ekman-Larsson, how this could be a great opportunity for him coming here. And he spoke about how the lack of success the last few seasons, and even though he said that it's not about him, it's about winning, it's about the team. He spoke about how still during those times he took it a little personally, and that there was times where he had to look himself in the mirror and how he could elevate his play there, even though there's a lot of talk about him being late on dumping chases, late to the corners, turning it over in his own zone. Hopefully that's a thing of the past. Hopefully now, as we spoke many times, how the Florida Panthers have been a team who have taken reclamation projects and make them flourish. And hopefully Ekman-Larsson is another example of that. And was asked about the how tough training camp is going to be under Paul Maurice, and Ekman-Larsson spoke about how it's supposed to be tough as well. And when it comes to the first few days of training camp, and has heard good things about the Panthers, and spoke about how it's all being open-minded. He's going to be asking a lot of questions about the new systems, but it's only going to get easier that once you do step on the ice. He was also asked about his foot, about how that is going, about his injury. Says that he feels fine. First broke it in February, and then re-injured it later on in the Worlds as well. But also there's an opportunity for him to also get a lot of minutes, especially because maybe he's going to be the quarterback on the power play. We still don't know it's going to be between him and Gus Forsling. So he's going to get a lot of minutes. But Oliver Ekman-Larsson's mindset, as far as what he said publicly, is he's just not going to come here to mail it in. Of course, he's not going to mail it in. He's trying to play for a contract. I know he's in his 30s, but you want to get a little bit more security, even though you're still getting paid by Arizona and Vancouver after being bought out. But I don't sense a reason of why he would mail it in, and also spoke about how he wants the guys of Montour and Ekblad to be back, because this is like we said, and like he said, it's about the team, it's about winning. And even in his free agency call with Bill Zito, don't sell me on Fort Lauderdale, sell me on the team. And Bill Zito loved it. He loved what he had to hear from Oliver Ekman-Larsson as far as that. So hopefully this is a little bit of a new taste for him, and hopefully it definitely helps him in his play. And also another newcomer for the Florida Panthers, Steven Lorentz, as well, wearing his jersey there. We saw the number 18, not the whole rumored number 11 that one page on Twitter with NHL jersey numbers said. So it is confirmed that he is wearing number 18 after all. And spoke about how Steven Lorentz was watching the Florida Panthers run from home and all that, and was very very impressed with the group, and also it's a team that you want to play for, and also spoke about when it comes to championship teams, it takes the little things to win, and that championship teams aren't always the most skilled, but they are the teams that are more committed and more focused and all that. And Steven Lorentz was asked mostly about his physicality. I mean, I asked him about with the Panthers and their lack of size, and just when they faced the Vegas Golden Knights, I asked him what he's going to be asked for to do as far as bringing the physicality. He is 6'4". He did have a career high in hits last season when he played with the San Jose Sharks prior to being traded to the Florida Panthers. And Steven Lorentz spoke about how certain jobs are available. Some guys are going to be your enforcers. Some guys are going to be your main goal scorers. Some guys are going to be your shutdown defenseman. And that he's very much aware of his role as well. And knows that he can use his body, and and that he knows like we said, he knows he's not a 60 goal scorer, and the fact that he's going to play with other hard hitting forwards like a Matthew Tkachuk, Ryan Lomberg, and a Sam Bennett as well. Um, I'm looking forward to see what this forward group is going to bring, as far as especially the neutral zone for puck separating hits as well, that could create transition opportunities as well. And Steven Lorentz, he might be a jerk on the ice, but the way his media availability went, the most polite I've heard someone in recent memory. Especially, I guess it's just the whole new team energy as well for him, saying great things about the team, and also instead of saying Coach Maurice, saying Mr. Maurice. And if you've heard Paul Maurice on other podcasts, in the regular media scrum, he's filtered. But if you hear him on like other podcasts like The Athletic and all that stuff, and even on the bench, if you look, especially in Toronto, that guy is unfiltered as they come. And I could only imagine Paul Maurice going up to Steven Lorentz, it's like, cut that bleep out and you just call me coach. I can only imagine that for Paul Maurice when it comes to Steven Lorentz calling him Mr. Maurice as well. And with Steven Lorentz, with the career high numbers, even though San Jose didn't win a lot of games, or they ended up being fourth, getting the fourth overall pick, eventually picking Will Smith in the draft. Steven Lorentz spoke about how his confidence is as high as it can be this season. Also, former Hurricane was asked about what did the Carolina guys say about the Florida Panthers, and he said there was really nothing that they said to him about the Florida Panthers, and they might not have been happy based on the sweep, even though Rod Moore says that it wasn't a sweep. But Lorentz said that Rod Moore's coaching style is very similar to Paul Maurice. And listen, this was something we even said even prior to the conference final, that these two teams are just built uh, so differently. And also about the trade, saying that he was caught off guard just celebrating Canada Day, didn't need to worry about being signing somewhere because he was still under contract, and then the trade went through for in exchange for Anthony Duclair as well, and all. So a little bit of a story about how he heard about the trade and all that stuff. But also he spoke about the informal skates that the team had as well, and the messaging was very clear. The fact that this team is off a Stanley Cup run is showing that the guys aren't messing around, and that is credit to the leadership in the on the team, the Barkovs, Kachucks, and all, and even Sergei Bobrovsky as well there, while two other leaders are not with the team right now. So the guys who have been there are sending a message to the new guys. It's like, you want to be here, this is how hard we're going to work. We're going to be that team that grinds. We're going to be a team that is going to get in your face. It's going to be a team that's going to be hard to win board battles with. It's going to be a team that's going to sacrifice their body to get in front of pucks to protect their goalies as well. And also when it comes to scrums, when opposing teams try to do the snow shower as well, that they're not going to take that as well. So it's clear messaging from at least from what we know about informal skates and all that stuff. And Steven Lorentz and Oliver Ekman-Larsson definitely, as far as what they're telling us, definitely are aware of the message that has been sent about setting a standard. That was a constant theme throughout media day, setting a standard for this franchise, and it's going to maybe and hopefully continue for day one of training camp, which starts today. Thank you guys so much for listening to part one of this media day coverage and hearing us discuss the training camp roster. Everydayers, make sure you come back later as we are going to discuss part two of media day as well. And we're going to be hearing quotes from Matthew Tkachuk, Alexander Barkov, and Sergei Bobrovsky. And later on in the week, Nick Fairbanks is coming back to discuss the first 2 days of training camp. But in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.